Like, and that's a thing. Like, when you want to talk about what partners can do, it's acceptance. It is understanding, like, A, he, she, they will not be the same as they were when they started the journey. The person that you engage in that activity with is not going to be the person that comes out the other side. Good, bad, right, wrong, or indifferent. You're not the same person that you were 6, 7 years ago. You're just
Yeah.
not,
Well,
right?
I mean, what is that like for you?
Oh, well, I mean, it's great now. Like, it's like kind of shitty going through it, but like, I mean, and I still have a ton of faith that, like, I saw something in you, like, whatever, like, everybody does that when they meet their partners, right? They're like, oh God,
Yeah.
and we all try to say that we accept somebody where they are, like, just, well, I accept you for who you are. Fuck, whatever. Everybody looks at it and says, hey, this person could do this a little bit better. That'd be nice, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all I ever really wanted out of this was like, are you just working to process it, to get through? Because I don't know that you're ever going to get to a point in your life where you can just say, okay, that's behind me now, and forward I go.
Yeah.
Like, yours happened at such an early age, and it was so defining that I don't know that you get past it. I genuinely don't, and I'm not a therapist, so I can't say whether or not it's something you can earmark and move on.
Do you not
But
feel like I'm past it now?
oh no, I think it defines you every day.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is painful.
Why?
Because I don't want my trauma to define me. I don't want to be defined by my trauma. I think it shaped my perspective, but I think I make a conscious choice every day on what that perspective is because my default perspective, because of the way I was raised and because of the inner voice that I got from my lovely mother, my default perspective is danger, negativity, self-hatred. And so I have to wake up every day and like that's why I'm so adamant about my time in the morning and my routines and journaling and meditation because I have to wake up every day and make a conscious choice that I'm not going to live in victimhood and I'm not going to be defined by my upbringing.
Okay.
And that's hard.
Yeah, I get it. I look at it as on the converse side of that. Your trauma, no matter what you try to do, your trauma will define you in some way, shape, or form. It has absolutely structured who you are, how you view the world. It has now changed and morphed over time because you're more educated, you're more enlightened, like you know how to process and deal with what occurred, and you're just, and now you're pushing your voice into the world. So I think it's in, even in the best, it still defined you because you wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't
Right.
be talking. I'll never forget, there was a colonel that attended my mom's service back in '99, and he said something that resounded. I was standing in the line, and my dad and I were, shaking everybody's hands and stuff. And he walked up, and he just put his hand on my dad's shoulder, and he's like, how you holding up? He's like, this isn't something you get over. You get through it. And he hugged my dad, and he walked off. And I'll never forget. Like, this is a guy. Like, I can't say that he ever met my mom, ever. Worked with my dad for a bunch of years, but like, it was just very impactful. And I think about that every time when I see you struggling, like, whatever.
Having a bad day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just, it's like, you're never gonna be fixed. It's like, it's just
I don't need to
stop.
be
I
fixed.
exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, you're you. Like, this is, like, your norm is just different. It's not better, it's not worse, it's just
Yeah.
different. And so you get through it.
I think you said for people who are looking for how best to support their partner through this, you said one of the best things they can do is just accept them. And I think that's actually probably one of the best things you can do as a survivor as well, is reach a place of acceptance, not for what happened and what you went through necessarily. That's fantastic too. But I think acceptance for yourself And like that's where you can start to build self-love and really reach a whole new part of life that for me, until I reached that, until I went through what that like fourth or fifth SGB injection, I
Oh,
didn't
that's really
know, yeah, I didn't know what self-love and self-acceptance was like. And that was what, a year ago, 2 years ago,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, that's been probably a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah. But having your partner's acceptance is one thing, but getting to a point where you can accept yourself and love yourself is also incredibly liberating for you as you go through a healing process.
Yeah, and that's something else that, if a partner is going through this with a survivor, like one of the things that they need to be, and they really do need to read up on. Like I had to do some pretty, stiff research on like that shift that will occur because your self-worth was and self-esteem a lot of times is so shaken that your I don't know how to state that, like your your normal, your the way
My
that you show up,
baseline,
yeah,
yeah.
like yeah, it's it is what it is. It's there, and then you go through this, learning, this evolution, and you become, more in tune with yourself, and you accept yourself as not the person or thing at fault, but the recipient of that, and you just
Mhm.
accept it, and so you accept yourself, and with that comes this power. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? Your baseline then shifts, and
Yeah.
how you come at the world, how you talk and to your partner, how you treat your partner, everything can change.
Yeah.
And so we've had moments where you and I have had this, very open dialogue of you're a type A if there ever was one, just like that's your nature, right? And so when you believe you're right, and especially now that you've indexed to the point of you have your voice back, you feel empowered. And that's something I had to get through. I had to learn that you're it's like you're stretching a new muscle. Like you just figured some shit out, and you're like you're wanting to
To
put
exercise your
your,
voice.
yeah. And
But it,
it's there's no problem with that.
yeah.
And it's just realizing, like, when you do it, like some of the things that you didn't used to say, you do say now. Like, and the way you say them is it's different today than it was, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I think you're learning, much like I am, of like what is and is not, like, okay. I don't know. That's kind of a messed up word, but
Well, I think it's more about learning how to communicate, which I think,
yeah.
to be fair, you and I have done pretty well over, especially over the last year. But it's interesting to me when I think about like the way that when we do struggle to talk to each other, the way that our dynamic is and prior to us having a dynamic, because we like masculine and feminine energy, right? Like my trauma and then my lived experience before you and I getting into a relationship forced me to live in a very masculine kind of personality.
Yeah.
I provided for myself, I took care of my daughter, like I went and got my degree, my education, started my career. And so I have lived for a long time in this very masculine kind of energy. And I think probably one of the most difficult things about our relationship is leaning into being the feminine and being okay with that. Like you talk about wanting to solve my problems, and I think that's probably the number one thing we fight over is I just want to explain something or I want to talk through something and you jump into solve like solution mode.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, what I've seen is like there's been a shift with me trying to understand, and especially in the last, I don't know, 6 months, like when you started bringing forward feminine versus masculine energy, and I started reading up on that and trying to understand and trying to lean more into, like, that's a level of discomfort. Like that's not a place that I'm comfortable. Like, you joke about the Nick Miller thing all the time, and for those who haven't seen it, New Girl, like you really got to go watch that show and look at one of the characters, Nick Miller. Like he's absolutely me when it comes to emotional
Emotions.
response.
Yeah.
And so, like recognizing that, your partner may need something different. Like apparently this is couples therapy now, but like that's like you have to recognize that. You have to be there and understand that. And if the way that you show up doesn't necessarily work for them, then is that good for either one of you? And that's taken
Yeah.
me a long time to realize, because my comfort level and my space of peace is just emotionally relatively detached. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't, that's just not me. And
Well, we
it's
could
like,
get into attachment styles now too,
oh yeah, I
which is
mean,
something, I mean, really, if we talk about what's going to help people as they're going through this in a relational dynamic, like a couple, like being aware of these things is really important. And your attachment style has a lot to do with how you interact with your partner.
right.
And
It,
we've had to fight our way through that because we have traditionally opposing attachment
Yeah,
styles.
100%. And
Yeah.
so, and that's again, we get right back into like marriage counseling. How bad do you want to make it work?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to make it work enough to change and to modify, how you view the world a little bit, and how you bring yourself to a relationship, or do you just throw in the towel, right?
Well, how do you do that without building resentment? Because the last thing I want to do is make you be somebody you don't want to be. It's more of a, for me, it's more of a perspective thing. I'm trying to enlighten you to my perspective.
And I take it that way now. I didn't take that way. I didn't take it that way always. And so that's something, all couples would need to be aware of and be cognizant of, because like when we first started down this road, I was coming, I was coming from a place of, wanting to help, wanting to, make sure that you had what you needed for support. But like, I did feel a bit dragged through the process or through the information, and I felt like it was a constant bombardment, because candidly, I don't know that I was ready to put the
Yeah.
time and energy into like going through the process with you. I'm still going through my own career. I'm still
Yeah.
doing all my own shit, and like having that weight of information, and the burden of doing research, and like trying to read these articles that you send me, it's like it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, if I don't I that yeah, I think resentment is a very real danger there if you don't have open communication about why you're doing this. It's not because I think you're an idiot and you don't know shit. I think this is very interesting. This is something that resounds with me. Maybe you should read it because it give you a little bit better perspective
Yeah.
of why I am the way I am and how I'm dealing with the world. And you didn't say that a lot up front. I think you meant to, or I think you meant it, but I don't think like it didn't really galvanize with me until a couple years ago. And you had said something about like, I can't remember how you phrased it, but it was something to the effect of like, until you understand how to deal with a trauma survivor, like we're going to continue to have these types of arguments and interactions. And I don't know, for whatever reason, you probably said that 50 times, but like for whatever reason that one stuck. And you send me articles and you send me snippets and things like that, and or you drop random words in some conversations, and I'd feel completely out of my element, and then I'd go look them up at night, and I'd do a little bit of research and try to figure out, okay, why did she say that at this point? And you have to want to do that.
Yeah. It takes energy and effort.
You have to want to do it. And so like, that's like, if I could caution anybody about going down this road, it's like, you
It's
have
not
to,
easy, right?
no, you have to want to do it. And
So,
that's
can I ask you a question? I mean,
what we're here. So
without and I can cut this out if you're uncomfortable with it, but what is the difference between kind of wanting to put that effort forth in any other marriage and putting that effort forth in a marriage with somebody who has PTSD?
all right, ask that again, because I'm not sure I understand.
Well, like you have to want to put in the effort. You're saying you have to want to
Yeah.
put in the effort to like learn about how your spouse deals with things and all of that. And I'm trying to understand from somebody who has never really seen a very healthy marriage. Like
Because
what
you're,
does
well,
that effort and energy look like
I,
differently?
no, I can answer it now, because I fundamentally believe you're my lobster. So the
Oh,
effort comes from a place of, this is the life I want. This is the life that I choose. And so with that means, go put forward the effort. Like, I, it took me a while. Like, in our relationship, it took me a while to get there, to recognize that that's what it was going to take. It was going to take energy and effort, and I, like basically my whole life, I've kind of just been a when it comes to relationships, like whatever, like they take them, leave them, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, that's never how I felt with you. That's never where I've been, and I wanted to be better and do better, and so for me, yeah, I mean everybody wants to act like it's altruistic. Oh my God, I'm here to help you. I didn't want to feel like an asshole. Like so there was
That's
some
good
I
motivation.
mean, there was
Yeah.
some self-serving there. Like I just like okay, I can be your standard douche and just let you do it on your own, or I can try to be an active part of your process and try to like figure out my piece in it. Like what does that look like? How do I show up? Like what do I and so I've definitely fucked it up more times than I've gotten it right, but like it's not for lack of trying. I mean,
Yeah.
I can definitely sleep well at night every single night because it's not for lack of trying. I may miss a lot, but like I try. And I mean, that's if I guess if I could give any one thing to anybody listening out there, it'd be that. Just fucking show up.
Yeah. That's
Like
99% of the battle most of the time, I think.
yeah, you act like don't act. Care. Fuck.
Yeah.
Like it's not like I did. I care about you. And I cared about what you were going through, but I don't know. I missed like the depth of like where the problem lies and what it takes for you, not just for me and everybody, but for you to work through that. And then the depth of the blast radius, the effects of everything that it's going to touch in your life. And what does that do? And how does it resound and echo across your entire family, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, you got dad and everybody else
Yeah.
has to know your stories. Like, they get to go through stories from the dark farm at dinner. Had to, you remember when we were in Arizona and I had to warn Rich. Like, you started talking about something, it was very graphic.
Again, I
And I
my
had to pull my brother aside, and he's just kind of looking like, he's stone faced, like, huh? And yeah, I had to.
this is why I don't tell stories because I just have terrible
They
stories.
are terrible, and I mean they're great stories, but they're fucking terrible. And I
To
just
be fair, I'm telling this in a comedic setting. Can we please be
well, you
clear?
you think it is,
People
but it's
laugh.
it's a record scratch every fucking time you do it. We sit there and try to have a nice family dinner. We all start swapping stories about when we were kids, and my brother's doing dumb shit to me, throwing candy bars down the thing and going fishing and dragging me through the because I was chubby, and dragging me through the house like I was a 10-pound bass, and that's funny. And then you drop one of yours, and everybody's just like, and right, it's not.
That's
It's
what
funny
we're.
to you in your head. You're laughing. All the rest of us are crying inside.
Oh, that's terrible. Okay.
So, partners of survivors and some tips and tricks, I guess. I'd encourage them to think about in their own space, what does it mean for them to come up with a mechanism by which they can help? And so for me, I go back to something it's kind of worked and resounded with me throughout my working career, and that's like distilling things down to like basic elements. And so for you and the way that I viewed this was attitude, aptitude, and energy. If I could literally just boil it down to three very simple things for me to concentrate on that I knew would kind of help me move the needle with you in this space, like kind of be a decent support system or whatever. Attitude, aptitude, and energy. And if I defined all those, it would be attitude, just basically a level of acceptance, but also like positivity, understanding that you have to have the right frame of mind, the right attitude coming into any conversation, any interaction, or whatever. And like you have to be open minded, and you just have to embrace what is. Like it is. Like your days are a continuum, right? It's a spectrum of like some days it's great and everything. You've really had no issues or like nothing like flare you up or anything like that. And then there's other days that are just rougher, right? And so it's just accepting that spectrum. Like it is
Yeah.
what it is. It's fine
And trying to have the best attitude throughout.
throughout it, right?
Yeah.
And so like you can't, you really have to try, and it's a struggle, like anything else. But like I said, if I could just, these are the three things that I kind of focus on, and aptitude, like got engage, like show a degree of intellectual ability to go and seek out answers and help yourself educate and become, something of an understanding soul in all these things that your partner is going through. And without you being willing to take that step, like you're never going to actually get to a place of understanding. You'll get to a place of listening. Just fine. Like that helps, right? Understanding and actually being able to have a meaningful dialogue and an intellectual conversation around that is a far different place for your relationship to be for the person who's suffered to go through part of their healing journey and feel safe, like being able to have a reasonable dialogue. So that's what aptitude means for me. And energy is like just show the fuck up, like show up,
Yeah.
put in the effort, put forward energy that is well outside of probably what you're comfortable with, probably what you're, like accustomed to. And in a space that until you knew this person or until you went through this endeavor probably didn't matter to you.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't something that was, of significance. So like you have to bring to me, that was easy, or not easy. That was what helped give clarity to me and to how I could show up for you in this space. And if I could just do those things on any given day, if I could bring you those three things, then I think that day for me was a success in trying to support you. And trust me, I know when there's misses. If like every other human being, right? I may not have the best of days, and so I may not bring you one of those three, and we miss.
Yeah.
Like you know this.
Yeah.
Like, and so I think it's really important that you have to be honest with yourself as a human being and as a couple that you ain't always going to hit a home run, right? Like every day it's something, right? It's we all have families, we all have lives, and so things tend to go a little bit sideways, and so showing yourself grace. You mentioned that earlier in our discussion is like self love. Like what you've taught me in all of these years is a degree of allowing grace because I've never had that in my life. I've never
Interesting.
allowed it. I've never had it for myself. Like I've never done that. It's always been
Interesting.
full throttle, all go, no stop. And any mistakes were just they were in me, regardless of magnitude, they were categorical fuck ups. Period. Didn't matter.
A
Minor,
massive
big,
failure.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was a miss, period, in a story. And what you've taught me through like all of this is like if you can't accept those as educational and learning moments, and that, trust me, like that, you helping me recognize that and understand and accept that as a human condition quite literally transformed my ability as an executive leader. Like my ability to look at a miss as a point of learning and a point of education, a point of reflection, and a point of bringing teams together to say, well, okay, what went wrong, and what are we going to do tomorrow to make sure that we don't have the same thing, go forward.
Right.
It really did. I mean, that had a major impact, and I saw it have real world implications, which made it very easy for me to digest as a human being, like to
Okay.
come back and say, yeah, this is a thing. So, I mean, those again, that's totally outside of what we were just kind of discussing, but those are the things like I would encourage your viewers to take stock in because it's really easy to get consumed and absorbed in how much energy, how much effort goes into all of this versus like when you take a point. You taught me about reflection. I never did that shit. Nope, didn't buy it to save my life. But you taught me about taking the time to think through not only dialogues but interactions and everything that goes on in a day. And like, what did you learn from that? There's always something to learn. And I wasn't necessarily good at being intentional at that as I should have been. And so you help bring that forward. And so like when I think about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to help folks through this, but also through your coaching endeavors and stuff, what you helped me with absolutely transcended helping me as your partner and helping you through your healing journey. It transformed the way that I showed up at work as an executive. Like
Wow.
that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And like it's something that you and I probably haven't really talked enough about. I haven't given you enough thanks for, but like that's it's a major thing. And it really has helped, I think, me become a far more effective individual in the workplace, because like I just see with different lenses now. It's like putting on a HD glasses. Like it's
Yeah.
just different, right? You have more color, things are vibrant, it's just not, I don't know. And I wouldn't choose it any other way now. Now that I've lived in this space, and even as difficult as it is, and how much energy it consumes, um, the life is richer and more full because of it. Like, even with all the warts, it's a better, more fulfilling lifestyle to seek out and try to understand versus just raindrop on a windshield, let shit go by.
Yeah.
So,
Just
yeah.
experiencing it and
Yeah.
actually thinking about what it means for you.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you and I have those, conversations quite often about, you always go deep end, right? Like,
Yeah,
you
I live in
that's
the deep end.
and that's, I mean, that's fine, and I don't, right? And
Mhm.
so I cherish the moments, and I'm smart enough, I think, now to recognize when when it's appropriate for me. Not only when it's interesting, but when it's important to you. I'll tend to do a little bit deeper dive, and I don't mind having a little deeper dialogue or whatever. But as a partner, like, one of the things that you need to recognize is your survivor may want to go deep, and you
Or
have to,
need to.
yeah, and you have to find a way to be there, to show up, and be empathetic and understanding of that need for catharsis. And so,
Mhm.
what do you do? How do you do that?
Yeah.
And so, it's something, even to this day, I still struggle with you, is because I don't enjoy going
Yeah.
super deep on a lot of these subjects, because I don't know, they're just, it's
It's
not even the touchy feely shit. Some of it is like, you look on our website, like, just, you go real deep and really educational, and for some survivors, like, it's very useful information, because it helps them give a framework to what they're feeling, why they're feeling it, and, like, absolutely. But for me, as your partner, it becomes very overwhelming,
yeah.
and so it is, wow, a lot,
Yeah.
and it's very technical, and so we're all have a job, we all have things to do, and so you're consumed with that, and
Well, I
then
think it's interesting to say that it's very technical, because you're an engineer by trade. So you're a very intelligent human being. And this is something that has
in all
been,
things that go up and down or round and round, not in mind.
I was just going to say, but this is very much outside of your comfort zone in the sense that it's a technical aptitude. It's just a different type.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's no different than, like, I think anybody probably suffers through this same type of, it's not necessarily a fear of the unknown, because I enjoy reading different things, but there's certain stuff that I just, it resounds with me, it lands, and it's like, wow, that was impactful. And then there's other stuff I read, and that's what I would encourage your viewers to recognize, is not everything's going to stick,
Yeah.
right? Like, you're going to find some really good information, and you're going to get a lot out of it, and you'll change your manners, your mechanisms, like the way that you interact. Like, you'll make some modifications, but then you're going to read some stuff, and you're going to be like, nope, take a hard pass on that. That doesn't work for me. Like, it doesn't land, like, whatever.
It doesn't resonate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the whole point of this podcast is just to share a little bit about the tools that have worked for me, some of the tools that have worked for you. And the more I bring different perspectives onto this platform, that's my whole idea is that everyone has to go through their own unique process and figure out what's going to work for them because there's a plethora of solutions, but we're all unique and we're all going to respond differently. Or, like you said, the things that you read are going to resonate or they're not. And you have to figure out what that is for yourself and for your
Yeah.
partner.
Agreed. And again, you have to show up with the right attitude. You really do. Like, you have to want to learn. You have to want to be actively engaged, because I'll be honest, like, the first 2 or 3 years, when you're about subtle as a gun. So it's not like you drop subtle hints. It was like, you're sending me bricks of text, and you're sending me emails with all these articles and links, and so, like, yeah, okay, got it. But, like, I I wasn't, to me, and this is, looking back on myself from, say, 6, 7 years ago, I was just selfish in that I thought, like, it's your trauma and I don't know how to fix it. I I just want to not be in your way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that goes back to the conversation earlier of, just because you're, not part of the problem doesn't mean you're helping with the solution. And it took me a while for that to kind of galvanize inside of me that, just standing on the sidelines and being out of your way wasn't necessarily the best help I could afford you. And so how do I show up a little bit differently? And then, it is. I mean, it's interesting, to dig into some of the material, and it becomes, because I care, very, I don't know, educational and inspirational for me. Like, oh, that explains that. Oh, that, okay, that helps. That, yep, yep. And so, I had to take an active interest in it, and it's unfortunate because, in the first few years, I don't know that I did, but it was like, this is your journey. I don't want to get in your way, but I don't know how to help you.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until, probably a couple, maybe 3, 4 years ago that I took a much more active role in like trying to, follow through with what you were, kind of sending me as information. This was interesting. I read this. This kind of resounded with me. And okay. And, before that, I can honestly say, like, you would send them, and every now and then I'd read them, but more or less I was letting you just send me stuff in thinking, and I poorly assumed that you were just trying to kind of keep me posted, just telling me what you were finding and sharing with me. And I didn't look at it for what it was, which was, you should go educate yourself in this space, because the shit that, I'm dropping on you, you are dropping on me, is pretty heavy. And there's probably things that you should be aware of in how you deal with it,
To
how you
protect
deal with me.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How you deal with me, because of the things that like, and I never looked at it from that perspective. I really didn't. But you get, like with anything else, right? You just get smarter and better with age, and you realize, like, okay, like, it wasn't necessarily a plea for help. It was a plea for, you, yeah,
Understanding.
asking just to be understood and heard. Me just kind of sitting there, like, staring at you out blank
Yeah.
faced wasn't what you needed.
And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier about needing to solve the problem. So this was an area that you didn't feel like you could solve the problem, so you more or less disengaged for a little while.
Yeah.
And then we realized that that wasn't necessarily going to work for our dynamic and what we both needed out of the relationship. And so we talked through that and worked through that. But I think something else that's really interesting that you're bringing up right now is like you also made a very conscious choice because you had a decision to make at one point or another. Were you going to put in more effort and energy in an area that you're really not sure about and don't have a lot of knowledge in? Or you could have made a different decision and gone a completely different route and chosen not to be in a relationship with me, which is, a very real alternative. So I think the other thing here is that I talk a lot about living a conscious lifestyle, which means being very aware of the decisions that you're making, why you're making them. And I mentioned earlier, I wake up in the morning and make a conscious choice about the kind of day I'm gonna have, or I do my best to do that. But my point being that it sounds very much like you made a conscious choice at one point in our relationship that instead of saying this isn't for me, this is too difficult, I'm going to learn more instead. And you started to learn how to hold space for me. You started to learn how to address and deal with your own emotional needs and like protecting your own energy and space while also trying to give me the space to heal.
Yeah, I think that probably came in the last year or two. But the shift with you happened when you had your breakdown.
When I had my breakdown
Yeah, with Amazon.
in,
Yeah,
yeah,
that was
in
what,
like
3 years ago.
2021.
Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
yeah, whatever that was. It was
That
the
was
beginning of 21, so almost 3 years ago.
that was probably the lowest I have ever been mentally.
And I could, I was ringside. I know,
Yeah.
like, and so yeah, I think that's when things kind of shifted for me. The fact that you were so overwhelmed and just distraught with work, and then the healing process that you were going through, like, everything just kind of came to a head. Um, and you're right, like, it was that, you have many watershed moments, right, in any relationship or in anything in your life. And yeah, I mean, I guess the easy, way of it is like, F this, I'm out. And like, that never occurred to me. What occurred to me was like, okay, like, we need to get her through this. What does that look like? And so if I got in, and I did this, I literally did this calculus in my head. If I got hurt and like something happened to me that was, very traumatic and I got laid up for a while and like, well,
Or life
what,
altering in
yeah,
some
what
way.
would
Yeah.
she do? I can say with all certainty, you would not leave me. You would figure out a way to help me and support me. Should I do anything less than that? No.
Yeah.
And so that was a very, to me, like I know that sounds callous or whatever, but that was a very easy, way for my engineering mind to go through the math and be like, she would never do that. Like, why the fuck would I do that? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't even on the table. And how could I help you through that? Like, it even moved all the way into my family, my dad, constantly trying to tell you, and sometimes like, and I would offer this to your viewers too, sometimes the survivors don't hear it. They hear it, but they don't actually process it, whatever it is you're trying to say. And so it didn't matter how much I tried to show or give to create a feeling of safety, security, like you don't have to work, like we'll figure it out, like all those things. Your trauma bound you to a very specific type of response. It really forced you to not accept that as a potential scenario or a potential outcome.
Accept support, help, like not having to rely on anyone but myself, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because you fundamentally did not believe that it could happen.
Yeah.
You did not believe me. It didn't matter that we'd already been together for 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it was, and like I wasn't going anywhere, and like we weren't enough money. We're fine, and but you still like you did not want to accept, and I think even to this day you still struggle with that, that acceptance of like you can take the time you need, like you can go back to work, you could do whatever later, like let's get you to a point where you're healthy and you're happy, and we can figure out like what your next steps need to look like. And it was like I felt, and I think many others would probably see this with their partners that are going through their recovery or their healing process, isn't a reluctance to accept that somebody's there for you, like
Yeah.
somebody's willing to help.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they won't ask for it because they just, between stigma and whatever, like they just sometimes they just won't ask.
Right.
It's pride. It was pride for the longest time. It was pride,
Yeah.
right? And you like uh, totally get it, right? We all have an ego. You absolutely did not want somebody else helping you like solve your problem or help you in your scenario, whatever that
Yeah.
was. And it's not about your trauma. It's like in that one instance, like you're a very strong woman, and you want the world to see that. Totally fine. We also need to understand, and I think the partners out there need to recognize that you gotta find a way to walk down that median and not necessarily walk into traffic, but also you got to stay off the sidewalk, right? You can't just watch the world go by.
Yeah.
And so like you gotta play a little bit of Frogger and try to like get in traffic a little bit. And that's what I've tried to find myself doing with you, is actively engaging in those dialogues and pushing back on you. And it's not fun. It never, those arguments never, go the way that we would choose.
Yeah.
But like it's it's something that I have to keep, I feel like I'm continuing to affirm, even though I don't know that you even want to hear it.
What, that you're there for me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think this goes back to, we mentioned it just real briefly earlier, the masculine and the feminine energies. Like my trauma is absolutely part of the equation for the reason that I am the way that I am, and force myself to work maybe when I don't have to, for
Yeah.
example. But the other aspect of that is absolutely that my life's experiences have put me in a position where I've felt like I've had to be in such a masculine energy for so long that the idea of stepping out of that is so scary. It feels so different and completely unaligned to like who I am. But I would say as we've gone through this process over the last few years together, and especially probably the last year, I think we're starting to shift a little bit more into like an area where I'm leaning on you more for the masculine side of the dynamic in our relationship, and I'm trying to be more of that like feminine energy, a little bit more soft, a little bit more just less about I have to figure it out and more like being willing to let myself be cared for. And I think that that's where the trauma comes back around is I had to be the one to provide for so long.
Yeah.
Like it's very much a new place to be in. And so I know that's hard for you though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, it is. It's just one of those things. Like, and that's, I think everyone who goes through this was probably see some level of that. Just because, I mean, it's the nature of the human condition. Like,
Like that masculine kind of energy of protection,
or
like
or the inverse, right? It totally depends, I think, on the relationship dynamic and how
yeah.
the person is, like kind of where they came from and what exposure they had and everything. But yeah, absolutely. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be the man v woman
Yeah.
thing, right? It could just be like whatever their shared experience is. But yeah, I think with you, that's probably been one of the harder things for me to navigate is not only like what you picture as creating a safe space for you, stability, security, like all those things, like basically just remove the ups and downs and just try to like, find that equilibrium point and achieve stasis, right? And
Yeah.
allow it to moderate. But like how to actually, enact that and all, like there's a lot of nuance to that. Like because like I said, you operate on a spectrum like every other human being, right? Yours just tends to be a little bit amplified on the ends.
Yeah.
And so it's about how do I not, so engineering amplitudes with waves increase, right? When in the same phase.
Hmm.
And so if you have something go like this and at the same phase something else is added onto it, those amplitudes will multiply, right?
Okay.
They're additive. That's it. A relationship dynamic to me is no different. You have a really bad day and I have a really bad day, the house has a bad fucking day.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and so what I try my level best to do is be very intentional. Like you say, when you wake up, you try to be very intentional about how are you going to bring yourself to the world today.
Yeah.
I find myself doing that and adding you. Like, so I wake up and I genuinely, I can honestly say that I wake up in the vast majority of my days, like ready for the next challenge. Like I'm
Yeah.
invigorated and ready to go. I have to be very intentional about my approach to you based on how I see you forming your day and how you are coming at things. And then I become very intentional about what I say, how I interact, and what I do or do not do to try to make sure that I equalize your amplitude down to a level that's what we call RMS, root mean square, like 67 to 73% of that,
A safe
right?
space
That's
though, a safe
exactly it.
level,
That's
right?
it. I'm just trying to knock off the mountaintops,
Yeah.
right? And just make sure that we achieve some degree of equilibrium. And so I find myself trying to do that, and I view
I
myself
think you're
very
really good
much
at that.
as a shock absorber. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to blunt the trauma of the world punching you in the face and just try to be here for you to vent and just discuss different things so that you don't necessarily let them stew. Like I think candidly you used to let a lot of stuff sit inside of you and that just was added, right?
Hmm.
You just
Yeah.
continued to add to the
Yeah.
baggage that you already had. And so I don't know. I don't know that there's a clean way that I found that works. Like, I think I found what works for us, right?
Yeah.
And
And I think what you're saying right now actually is like some people might look at that and think that there are some unhealthy dynamics at play there. But as long as you don't feel like you're doing those things out of a sense of obligation or it's leading to resentment in some way because you're not doing it out of any other motivation than kind of self preservation,
no,
then
it's to me it's done in a spirit of giving, right? Like in
yeah.
any good marriage, right? Like you go look at William Ernest Ferd or whatever the hell it is that we have. There's some quote we have in our bathroom somewhere about
Oh,
like what a successful marriage looks like, and one of
yeah.
those things is literally loving in the spirit of giving. And I genuinely take that to heart. Like, if you can't do that, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, if you can't look at your family and the ones that you love, and just genuinely operate from a place of trying to just be the right person, and just be right in that moment, like, what the fuck, what are you here for? Like,
Yeah.
and that's, so I very much view that with you. It's like, I know if I was going through something really shitty in my life, like again, I'd liken it to a disability. If something happened to me, like, I have a very good picture in my head of the lengths that you would go to make me feel loved, safe, and okay. Me doing anything less than that is not even, it's just not. So how do I figure out how to do that, right? And for us, again, I find what works for you, and it's changed a lot over the years. Are you getting ready to cry?
I think so.
Why?
It's okay. That was very sweet.
Oh gosh.
It's fine. Go ahead.
Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I just, what worked for us, well, or didn't, 3, 4, 5 years ago, is different today, right? And so, folks need to understand that much like I keep using the continuum analogy with you, like your days, on a spectrum, your relationship migration over time, it changes
It's
too.
also, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the person I was 7 years ago, and I'm thankful for that.
We aren't the couple we were
No,
7 years ago.
agreed,
Yeah.
and I'm thankful for that, right? Oakley's not the person she was 7 years ago, and so, like, it's, you have to understand, and anybody, and like, I don't know if I had to go back in time, and I had to tell my old self, 7, 8 years ago, hey, like, Sam's gonna, get into therapy, and like, shit's gonna change.
This is going to be a wild
Yeah,
ride.
and if I could, like, literally articulate what that ride would look like to that person, I don't know that that person 7 years ago says okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you know me from 7 years ago. Like, that's like, I had no patience whatsoever. Like, I just didn't. And so I don't know that 7 years ago somebody told me, here's the amount of work, here's all the shit you're gonna have to, like, here's all the stuff you're gonna have to see and do and be, and like all these things. I don't know that. I'd have been like, I gotta be honest with you, I'd have
Fuck
been like,
that.
fuck that. Like, I'm
Yeah.
out. And like, and so, again, the, migration over time for us, for our situation, has absolutely been beneficial, because it gave me time to mature. It gave me time to, to really understand at depth, like, what the hell is at play, what's going on, and what I can do to help, what I can't do to help, and what I absolutely must do to not hurt.
Yeah, I think if you could leave anyone with one thing, like, that's a pretty beautiful note to end it on. If you're ever at a loss for what to do, just don't hurt. Just don't hurt anymore. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being my first guest.
Yeah, no problem.
I thought this was a good chat. You think so?
Yeah.
Well, I hope this was informative and inspiring, and hopefully you picked up a couple of helpful tips along the way for your own benefit. I just want to give a huge shout out to every single person going through their own storm right now. It may seem heavy, like all hope is lost, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Take care of yourself, take care of one another, provide space and acceptance and radical candor smothered in love, and know that healing is possible. Until next time, remember, you have the power to break your own code and rewrite your story. Thank you for joining us today. I'll see you next time.